Hey everyone, today for another vlog, and today I want to talk about a realization I had today from reading a book. I really have no idea why I went for that book. It's a really weird one. I don't think I would have ever read it. Like, like I would say, I don't think I would have ever like agreed to the idea if not for the book. The book is called Existential Kink. It's pretty unique. I'm not sure if I should just state the thesis because it's so weird that there's a way in which like the mind really shuts out when it hears that. But I guess I can just go ahead. The thesis is basically that like all of the things we usually label as bad, in our lives, you can you can almost guarantee that there's a part of you that actually enjoys it in some way. Um, the reason is that the things that happen to us are very like accidental because they were sort of co-creating reality. Or like it's not like it's purely external. It's not like it's purely internal either. It's a combination of two. Um, in our personal lives, at least, for that, I'm not saying like everything about everything about the world is like that. But like when you think about like most of the things that happen to you, no, pretty much everything that happens to you, especially as an adult, right? Like, as a child, it's harder to say because you're full of you're far more dictated by your external environment as a child. But as an adult, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're co-creating it. And so, like the stuff that you end up having in your life is it's a pretty strong reflection of some of the parts in you, and very likely parts of you that you're not aware of. Right? So, like it's what's Jung would call the shadow. So it's it's not just unconscious stuff, but it's like stuff that you almost deliberately ignore because it's uncomfortable. So typically one example for me is like the way I tend to get quite anxious when I see other people, especially artists, who are successful, and there's this sense in which I see them, I'm like, I'm better than them. How come they have that much success? I feel like I'm better than them, but like that's the big one with this projection and all that. I feel like I'm better than them, but how come they're so successful? And there's all this insecurity in me. So that's one example of shadow stuff. Like it's the stuff that we repress, it's unconscious, and deeply shapes our lives. And so the thesis of existential king is that in fact, uh, all of this unconscious stuff and all of that which we wish to repress and we are you know ashamed about, which is why we hide it. Right? Shame is the big part why we don't face our shadow, is because it's also scary and uncomfortable. Is in fact that all of these patterns that happen over and over are in a way things that we kind of like in a weird way. So the realization I had about my life is the following. It makes a lot of sense now, but it it really hasn't for the past year or so. But it's kind of like the high vantage point that I've had today. Honestly, it's one explanation. Right? It's hard to say whether it's the truth, but it's the thing that makes the most sense for me right now. So I'm in a job that I don't like. Um, that happens to a lot of people, right? So that's a typical of a situation that people don't like, and it's also can be a kind of a recurring pattern, right? Like people complain a lot about the job they don't like, and yet they don't do anything about it. That's what interesting, isn't it? Um, and so like I used to have like I wouldn't say like victim mindset, but kind of where it's like I felt like reality or like society was like against me, like it's like bro, society and all of the jobs it provides, none of them are fulfilling. We're just all slaves of the technological system and all that. We I still agree with that, but it's a very disempowering narrative. And yeah, narratives are a thing you can move around, and it's probably very, very, very helpful and important in your life to go to a narrative that is more helpful, right? Like the thing is that human beings are really bad at assessing truth. The best thing we have, I would say, are narratives and like what type of thing we would want to go for, like what we like basically. And so like you know, I still agree with like the narrative of like more of like the techno pessimist, societal decline, societal collapse, and all that. I still agree with those to an important extent, but uh, when it comes to my individual life, I can decide to be sad and depressed in a corner, or I can decide to focus on what I can change. And in my personal situation, it's very clear that I can change a lot of things. And it's also very clear that the main reason why I'm in the job that I don't like is, and that's really the realization I had, is that it's really scary to break out. It's really scary. It's a situation that I have co-created in my life because it's much more comfortable to just go with the flow and do the sort of bullshit job. And even if it's draining in important ways, because the other side of it, the real solution is quite overwhelming. It's quite overwhelming and scary and confusing to go on the other side. And so when I saw that, when I saw that very clearly as a series of sentences, like it it made a lot of sense in my mind, but also in a way you could say it made a lot of sense in my belly. Like there's just like a space that opened up, and I was like, oh yeah, that's why. Like I could really see like the point of tension you could say in the body. It's like, oh yeah, it is scary to do your own thing and to do something that goes against society, and that is why ultimately I know at this current job. And like you could say you could say that, like, how to say, at the end of the day it's purely external and I'm just changing the interpretation of a reality, like the fact that like all the jobs in society are just unfulfilling and that's just how it was, and I've just chose the path of least resistance because that's what humans tend to do, and so on. Again, I don't disagree with those narratives, but I just find them very disempowering, very unhelpful, and again, they're not strictly true. Like narratives are never like strictly true. The most important ones are true in important ways, but they're also always incomplete. So like to only look at so you could say the external view of society is very limiting, I would say, because there's very much a way in which I enjoy, and that's really the why it's called existential kink, right? I haven't really gone to that point. Uh, the existential kink part is the fact that it's an enjoyment of something that you feel like you shouldn't enjoy. So like the author gives an example of like her relationship with an abusive boyfriend. Like I don't know if she went into great detail, but basically the type of boyfriend that would just like throw stuff at her and like get angry and such, right? And she described how she actually there was actually a part of her that actually really enjoyed it because it made her feel important. It made her feel like a martyr, and when you feel like a martyr, you feel like you're like morally better than other people, and like it's kind of like power through victimhood, if that makes sense, right? Like that, like the power of the martyr is that. It's pretty weird, right? But like it's again, it's human psychology is pretty weird. We do kind of enjoy being victims in important ways. Maybe victim is not the right word, but like it's like we take it's like taking the moral high ground by like putting yourself on the receiving end, if that makes sense. Or like you're like, oh my god, the world is so unfair to me. Like, do you not see how unfair people are? Please give me your attention and all that. Like, I definitely remember doing that a lot when I was younger, and I still have done it later on. Um, yeah, as a child, as a teenager, I used to be so attention hungry. It was insane. I used to like sort of like yeah get into like those victim situations where I would intentionally, or I would say not, I wouldn't say intentionally, but like there was definitely a pretty strong pull, and I wouldn't really stop it to like make a situation worse if I was sort of on the receiving end of something, just to make the other person feel worse. So yeah, it's, it's so I think that this book is really true in my experience. We the so-called negative experiences that we call in our lives, pretty much guaranteed that in some way you enjoy them in an important way. And so the book is an invitation to really just recognize that and to actually really embrace that, right? Not to fight those parts, not to fight those parts that like create what our ego calls negative situations, and to realize that like yeah, like human life is a weird thing, right? For humans at least, like we think like we want all the good things, but in fact in many ways human life is about limitations as well. It's also about the whole like series of yeah just limited experiences, or like humans are by definition limited and like dual, finite. So we experience things in dualities. So we are we feel alive, and then we feel like we're going to die. There are things that we like and we don't like, obviously, and so on and so forth. And it's really, in many ways, like trying to only have the good without the bad. It's deeply contrary to like the sort of uh, just human experience, like the fundamental aspects of the human experience, finiteness, and as a result, limitations and duality. And it's a really interesting. It really has to be read because it's one of those books that like the tone of the writing is really important. Like it's not just about the ideas, but and I think what the book does really well compared to a lot of books that help you like debug yourself, I would say, but like comparisons between the mind and computer systems are always very reductive, but in an important way they also kind of matter because the mind is very glitchy and also very like mechanical. And like when you're trying to debug your mind, I think the really key aspect of existential kink is that it's very very funny. It's much lighter than all of the books I've read, and yeah, it's really refreshing. I think that's really needed touch on relating to yourself. It's like this really like not taking yourself so seriously. I think that's one of the biggest like diseases in the modern Western world is just how seriously people take themselves, and not just themselves, but like the story that people tell themselves. Like it's in many ways the real. It's kind of weird like to say it, right? Like, but in many ways, the pain that we feel, I would say, in life has actually mainly to do with the inner story. It's not the actual experience of like being rejected or the actual experience of like I don't know doing something and not measuring up to expectations. It feels like it's way more about like this inner story that we tell ourselves about how we are awful as a result of making mistakes, or like no one will ever love us, or like things can never get better and all that. Like all of these really black and white narratives that we create about ourselves and life. In many ways, I feel like those are really like the painful points, or like they make things like 10 times as worse as they really are. But like there is genuine pain in rejection. I'm not saying that's purely a story in the mind. There is also there's also genuine like overwhelm in life that is not about the mind, or like trauma is not a mind thing. It's also like in the body. Um, but in an important way, I think the this inner story is really a huge like trying to cling to your inner story far too much. It's a huge obstacle, and it's really nice to have someone that just cuts right through it with humor. I think it's a very very important toolkit in life, but tool in the toolkit to have humor, because I don't know, like because obviously the problem with taking yourself too seriously is that obviously everyone eventually dies, so like what was the point of taking yourself so seriously? Uh, yeah, it, it's a very interesting book. I really have no idea how I came across it. Trying to think. So the author gave a talk on the store, and I've watched a decent amount of talks on the store, or I'm not sure what it's called now, but it was called the store when it was running sort of live. I never caught any of the things live, but I watched it on YouTube. Yeah, I think that's probably like one of the place where I saw the book, and I think some of the people that I tend to watch also, one of them might have mentioned her. It's really interesting how it's sort of interconnected the people that have shaped my life. So most of them are on the store. Interestingly enough, I think like the selection process on that is really really good. Yeah, I don't think I have much to say at this point. Just yeah, feeling a lot lighter and a lot more like ready to just accept myself as I am, my current situation as it is, right? Because I realized that yeah, in an important way, there's a reason why I'm here. Right? It's not just like life is just victimizing me or whatever. It's because it's really overwhelming to like go on the other side, and I sort of want to meet all the parts. Right? Like want to meet the part that enjoys the comfort here, and I want to meet the part that wishes to take the leap but is sort of scared. And I think the book at the end of the day makes it so much easier to sort of understand all of your parts, especially the ones that you don't tend to listen to out of shame and out of unconsciousness, and trying to tell yourself what you should do and what you should think, which never works because like you are what you are who you are. You can't should yourself into something you're not, right? So yeah, that's what I think I'd say for today. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.